Hey, Bomb Squad. If you're a comedian or a podcaster looking for an affordable website solution with a modern look, then we recommend Puck's Hub. With a Puck's Hub website, you can set up your new website in minutes with easy-to-use pre-built templates. Puck's Hub websites are customizable and can easily be integrated with other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The best part? Puck's Hub plans are only $5 per month. We use Puck's Hub for our website at the Art of Bombing podcast, and we think you should too. That's why we've partnered with Puck's Hub to offer listeners a free 60-day trial. Head over to puckshub.com to subscribe and use promo code AOBPOD at checkout for your 60-day free trial, and then pay only $5 per month after that. Take your career to the next level with your own Puck's Hub website today.
Dan Bublitz Comedy Productions.
Secrets from Tracy Morgan's Bodyguard. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 281.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Art of Bombing podcast. It is me, your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me, as always, is my co-host, co-producer, and cohort, Mr. Josh Shirley.
Hey!
You're looking very tan, my friend.
Very tan.
Very
yes.
tan. Vacation did you well. You got some color. You're looking very
Puerto
handsome.
Rico. Yeah, it was a good time, man. You ever been to Puerto Rico?
I'm not. I would love to.
Okay.
I don't get invited on trips like that, Josh.
Okay. Yeah, well, you're not coming with me. It was like me and my wife, no kids. Like, no one got invited to that. Now, here's what happens.
Keep it clean.
Oh, yeah. So here's what happened when I'm on the way back from the airport. So I'm driving, and so I'm in the all the way right lane on a freeway. I was in the middle when the right lane evaporated, so now I'm in the right lane, and then the lane next to me is actually the on-ramp lane. And in Kansas City, like, it's actually a pretty decently planned city, but there are a couple of places still where, like, people getting on don't have enough room to do that, and they just kind of pop out of nowhere on you. I'm driving along, and I get to one of those little bottleneck places, and like this blue sedan in front of me just starts cutting over into, like, if I don't stomp my brake, this person is going to just sideswipe me. They're going to hit me right in the side. And I'm like, what do you do? I mean, it's just complete jerk move, right? They're just pushing their way over. Now, what happens next was sort of upsetting at first, but then after I had some time to reflect on it, it was actually pretty well coordinated. As he's doing that, now there are multiple people in this vehicle. All the windows are rolled down. As he's doing that, two simultaneous hands with middle fingers come up to flip me off as they're passing by. Like, so as they're making their way into my lane using my space that I was clearly in first, they're like flipping me off, like in a like. Now here's the impressive thing: neither of the people flipping me off were the driver, so there had to be, and like both fingers came up at the same time, and there had to, and on different sides of the car, so there had to be like, okay, everybody. Jordan, Skyler, are you listening? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to cut over. This guy's going to freak out. And what I want you guys both to do is to flip him off for me. Like at the same time.
So what you're saying is it was a coordinated effort to give you the middle finger.
It was like a Jack in the Box situation. Like they both came out to music. And I was like, wow, that is, I mean, I was obviously really mad at first, like anyone
I'm
would
sure.
be. But then, like, the middle fingers were, I was like, you know what? That took some work. I bet these guys do this all the time.
And then they're like professional.
Yeah. It's like a
What a
circus
welcome!
car.
What a welcome home, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome back. And that did not happen to me in Puerto Rico. I drove a lot there too.
That's funny that happened right when you got back. Have a nice vacation, uh, and then you come back to that. Welcome
Yeah.
to America.
Yeah. Welcome to America.
Entitled douchebags everywhere.
Yeah. We're still here, in case
Yeah.
you're wondering.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that's what we're here for. Well, it sounds like you had a fun time in Puerto Rico, and then now that you're back, not so much, but you're here, so that's good.
I'm here.
I was
Hey,
beginning
we're
to
having
wonder.
a good time on the Art of Bombing podcast, Bomb
That's right.
Squad. Get into it. We got a great episode this time with Amanda.
We do have a
Kuster.
great episode. Yeah, we have Amanda Kuster on the show, and it was fun to have her on the show because she's been a big fan of the show for a long time, and so it's always interesting. It's always cool when you get to have a comic who's been listening to your podcast on the podcast. You know, there's a lot of passion in there, I feel like.
Okay, good. Yeah, it seems like a very productive dialogue. A lot of good topics that we'll get into in the in the callback after people have a chance to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one thing too, before we get into this episode, I'm doing a special thing this week where we're for a plug. We usually plug our own stuff and whatever, but I wanted to plug a new book that came out because it's a former guest of the show, friend of mine, Wendy Mayberry, created the Gig Diary that she put out. It's available on Amazon, and I'm plugging that because I think it is such a great idea. It's funny that she put it out there, and what's funny to me is that I actually do a lot of the stuff that she has in her journal, I was already doing in my own journal, just something that I had been cataloging, and because it's got a lot of cool things that you can do in the Gig Diary, like the first couple of pages, you can write down your goals, which that's something we talk about in this episode is goals, but you can, write down, you can set your goals, you can give them a priority, you get to put a start date, end date, there's accountability. She's got a section for writing down recommendations to, when people recommend that you watch something or listen to something or read a book or those kind of things, you can keep a tally of that in here. She's got a place to set, big goals, long-term goals, short terms, just a place to put dreams, all kinds of fun stuff like that. And sections for accountability. And that's just the first few pages. That's not even the diary itself. And in the diary itself, what it is, it's a gig diary, like the title says. And you can, it has information where you can put the date, the venue, the name of the show, who booked it, how much you got paid, what day of the week it was, your set length, mileage, any notes that you want to put on the venue. There's a section to put your set list, a section that you can write notes from the performance about the set list. There's notes if you want to take for opening acts and other acts on the show, the staff. And then if you have more ideas, there's a section for free writing. And then she's got some other fun stuff in here, water intake, how you felt that day, in the morning, afternoon, evening. So you can kind of track your mood for the day, because those are things. And we talked about, and we've talked about it before, how mood can affect your performance.
Yeah,
I know
totally.
I've definitely had that happen. Also has another fun little section in here. Did I have enough is the name of the section. Fruits, veggies, sleep, exercise, fresh air, vitamins. If you take medicines, there's a section to remind you to take your medicines. Then there's a blank section that you can just do whatever you want with. If you want to keep track of something. And then there's a section for your energy level and stress level. And so this is a really cool product that you can, go and monitor your shows, because then you can really see your progress. like I said, I've done this before, not as in detailed as she's got it. Usually what I do, write a set list, how much it pays, how much time I'm doing, the city, the venue, that kind of information, and the notes. A lot of this extra stuff I don't do, but I will be doing, because I'm actually, as I'm going through this with you, I've got the book in my hand. I've already purchased my copy of this. So
Nice.
I'm going to be using this. But one thing I've done in the past, because I've done this for like the last 4 or 5 years, and it's really cool at the end of the year, going into goals, talking about goals and stuff. But one thing I like to do is to measure my progress. And so I can take the data that I collect throughout the year and then put it in a spreadsheet and compare it to the last few years. And it's been cool to see how one year I performed, like 37 hours and I got paid X amount of dollars for the year. And then the next year I performed, 30 something more, some hours. It wasn't very many more, but my pay significantly increased for the year. And it could, track how many open mics I did, how many times I headlined, and all these different things like that. So I think it's a great book. Wendy Mayberry's a fantastic comedian. She's in marketing herself. So this is a great product. Go to Amazon, buy it. I do know right now it's kind of a big book. It's a regular size, 8.5 by 11. But I do know that
it's a great size if you're writing.
It is. But for comedians, we like smaller things because we like to have them in smaller bags and things. So she is going to, because we already talked about it, she's looking at making a 6x9, a journal size.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, exactly. So so there should be a journal size version coming out soon.
For everybody, I have a link, the Amazon link, actually in the show notes. So
yeah, perfect. So go buy it. It's only $15. It's a great product. And here's the thing: not only are you getting a great product that's going to help you, you're supporting another comedian. You're supporting another artist. So keep that in mind when you think, oh, I don't want to spend $15. Yeah, whatever. Do yourself a favor. Get the book. Get your accountability. And then at the same time, you get to support another artist who is fantastic. So, all right. Should we get into this conversation?
Let's get into this conversation.
Hey, man, you really have changed. You got tan, and now you're like, hey.
Yeah, like I didn't go to Italy. I went to Puerto
like,
Rico.
what's going on, John?
Yeah,
all right. Let's get into this conversation with Amanda Kuster. Enjoy.
And now it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
I did recently do this to my hair because stereotypes. I got a really bad relationship. I don't know if you've heard this, women will do a traumatic change in their hair. So I did that. I'll tell you about him, okay? So he was a very nice gentleman. He was really attractive. I know I exude this energy of confidence, but really attractive people, I'm very shy, intimidated. I can't really talk to them, but I surveyed the audience and I can easily talk to everybody here. And you're a really smart audience because you laughed at that, so that's awesome. So he was great. You know what he had? He had a big fat dink, D-I-N-K, dual income, no kids. I loved it. I was like, yeah, we're like loving life, living life, but then tragedy struck. He cheated on me. Yep. And then he broke up with me. Yeah. And then, worst part of it all, I woke up. I was dreaming. I am painfully single. Yeah. I was dreaming. It was all a dream. So it's still traumatizing because I did this to my hair. Yeah. I was like, well, I gotta change it up, because, what if I have another dream with a dream guy? Gotta be ready. Just gotta be ready. I will tell you, I recently weighed myself, and I'm gonna share it with you all, okay? I weigh 180 pounds. I know, I don't look it. I'm amazing. Round of applause. Yay! I wear it well. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I went to my mom because I was like, Mother, she could give me some advice on this. And I'm in my 30s, and I go, Mom, I'm around 180 pounds. That's the heaviest I've ever been in my lifetime. She goes, that's okay, hon. You just have to grow a couple more inches.
It's the art of bombing.
All right, we're rolling.
Awesome.
So you just said before you were talking about it, and I didn't get too deep into the conversation because I was saving it to talk about when we started recording. You just did the Loons on the Lakes Comedy Festival. You were talking about that. What was that like, that experience?
Yeah, it was remarkable. I'm just disbelief that I was on stage with so many amazing comedians. They're just phenomenal, and I was super stoked to be just a part of this inaugural event. It's the first ever comedy festival, Minneapolis, like at the Croon Supper Club. And
so it was in Minneapolis?
Yeah,
or
technically close. So Findlay, very, very close. And it happened to be the same weekend as T-Swift coming into town. So
interesting.
There was a lot going on that weekend, plus LGBT Pride weekend.
Yep.
And so the fact that we had anybody show up was pretty remarkable.
How were the show? There were people?
Yeah, there were people. That was
Good.
really cool because they had, in addition to the Crooner Supper Club being like, there's a couple rooms inside the club, they actually had a tent outside. So that is kind of trepidatious. Like some people are like, "Ooh, tent."
Right. They're like, I don't know if I want to.
I don't know about that, but that's where a majority of the competition for $10,000 was held.
Wow.
So some of the competition like rounds were indoors.
Mm-hmm.
I did my heat outside. So, yeah.
Was it hot?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I wondered how, because it's been pretty hot the last week or so.
Yes, it was very hot, and the Minnesota State bird, the mosquito was out, like
all the things.
All the things. And so I mean, it was the heat and it was hot. So it was very, I guess it worked out. And I just had fun participating and got to experience that. And I remember there was they kind of held like a panel with agents that were the judges of the round.
Nice.
In the morning on Saturday. So it was like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday it ended and concluded with the $10,000 finalists. There's 5 of them. And but in this panel, one of the agents goes, "Did anybody tape your set?"
Oh, no.
And the room, all different levels of comedians, a lot of really professional, they're like, nobody said anything. So she's like, "You need to be taping your set."
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing. Yeah, I try to tape my sets at all the shows. If there's a place that I can set up a camera. Like tonight, we're both on the same show for Jokecella at the Comedy Fort. I probably won't be setting up a camera because there's just not going to be room. Because that club, they usually sell out and do really good on shows, and there's just not really room. But the club itself does a lot of videotaping themselves, so you can pay for the tape and get it. So it's like a situation where you don't need to bring your own equipment. But any other time, I always try to bring a camera and record. I've got hours and hours and hours of stand-up which could be turned into content too.
Yes.
If I would just get off my butt and go through and edit it and cut it all down.
No, I hear you. So I took that feedback and I showed up at a showcase before the competition that Saturday, and they said, "Amanda Kuster, can you hop on the showcase?" And I was like, "Yes." "Can somebody tape my set? Like, can I get this tape?" So I took advantage of that. That's like what I took away from it. And so even though I didn't get my actual performance in the competition video recorded, I did voice record. I voice record all my sets. If I can't figure out the video situation, I'm going to voice record. So at least I can hear it, see where the laughter is. But it turned out good. I did get a video recording of a showcase.
Excellent.
So it was good.
That's awesome. And how did that go? How'd you feel?
Speaking of bombing, I don't think I bombed. It was like one of those situations where like they were laughing, but were they just doing it like, "Ha ha ha, I'm going to encourage you." Like it was more of like, okay, this is good. So I
almost felt like sympathy laughter instead
almost,
of,
yeah. There's one I think part of something I sent you, I was like, this is where the good laughter was, because there was definitely some like hesitancy with the beginning, and I was like, okay, I got him at this point, but it definitely was kind of harder to warm him up And I think that's something that I'm experiencing. I was like, I need to get the audience's attention right away, like boom. And I mean, with my last name being Keester, I do like an introduction every time. I'm like, hey, everybody, my name's Amanda Kuster. If you're sitting down right now, you're sitting down on your Keester. It's really good. The other night, I was like, my name's Amanda Kuster. I just like spewed. Yeah. And I was like, what was that? That's like not me. So, I mean, I just have to make sure that I'm honed in and being like, okay, I need to make sure I articulately say words and not just scream in the microphone, because that is my tendency. I love like grabbing it and be like, what's up, everybody? And that is my go-to thing.
That's funny that that's your go-to thing, because that used to be my go-to thing. I used to be, I got pretty well known for being that comic that I would like get on the mic and just be like, what's up? And then whatever I was at, whatever club, and like, make some noise, like that, very aggressive and loud. And
yep, that's where
I'm not like that now.
I aspire to be where you're at, so beyond that point. So.
I've rolled it back a little bit.
Yeah.
I was always trying to go at 11. I'm like, yeah, maybe 8 or 9 isn't bad.
Yeah. You don't need to blow people's eardrums off to capture their attention.
Exactly.
You could do a clever joke.
Yeah. Who would have thought? You could start your stand-up set with stand-up.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, how am I going to do this? Use a joke. Okay.
Just tell a joke. That'll get their attention, especially if it's funny.
Exactly. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What brought you to Minneapolis? I'm just kind of curious, because we, interesting enough, missed each other. You moved to, we did a trade. Northern Colorado, Southern Wyoming swapped. You left and they got me.
Yes.
And then I left the Twin Cities, and the Twin Cities got you.
Yeah, it was crazy enough. I was down here listening to your podcast, longtime fan. Don't know where that tape deck is. Still searching for it.
It's hidden. I don't pull the tape deck all the time.
It's only for the special guests. You're not special enough.
Yeah. They gotta, I pull it out for legends, because usually legends don't know technology. If I pull out all this other equipment, they're like, what is this? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Let's pull out the technology you understand.
This is a tape deck.
This is a tape deck.
You put the microphone in front of it. Now talk into this. Yeah, after the pandemic, I was like, I'm going to go to family. And my parents live in Minnesota. They don't live in Minneapolis, though. Mm-hmm. So the goal was, I'm going to move to Minneapolis. I'm going to get to where I can get on more mics. I was living in Laramie, Wyoming for 3 years. I did as a student activities coordinator for the University of Wyoming. So the cool thing about that is I got like behind the scenes of what it takes to produce shows. I brought comedians in, and funny enough, the very last big event we did before COVID hit was we had Demetri Martin on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I just remember his wife calling and was like, please don't let him hug anybody. We don't know where this is at. It was just like more of this surreal thing. Like, I was like, on one side, you're like, this is epic, Demetri Martin. He's huge. This is awesome. On the other, we have to all worry as a world, like what's happening, what's going to come. And so after COVID hit, and I just kind of reassessed what am I going to do. So I moved up there, and then my goal was to get a job in Minneapolis so I can start hitting mics. And in December, I finished my MBA at the University of Wyoming. It was all online. My goal is to open up my own comedy club in the far future. So I was like, this will be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I eventually got a job in downtown Minneapolis. In January this year, I've been hitting it pretty hard, getting open mics as many times, almost like every night, sometimes twice a night. So.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's good that you found a job right away. Although I don't know if I would have moved to Minnesota, but I get having family. I left because, not because of comedy. I left because, for one, I was getting tired of the winter. The winter's down here a lot more mild. But I guess if you were in Laramie versus Colorado, there's a big difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Laramie is a smaller town, and they're like, oh, the highway's closed. You can't go anywhere. But at least like if you're locked down in Colorado, there's like stuff that you could still get to. So,
although we're making fun of Laramie, but I do love Laramie.
Oh yeah.
I always have a good time at Laramie.
Yeah.
When I do shows up there. Shout out to our mutual friend, Caroline.
Yes.
Because she's great. And she's been doing a great job of putting on shows.
Yes.
up in Laramie. So that's how I met her, was through another friend of mine. When I was trying to book a tour last year or a couple of years ago now probably, and he put me in contact with her, and then we did the show together, and we've been like buds since. So
absolutely, Caroline is killing it up in Laramie. She's awesome. She's like, yeah, we just had drinks the other night, and oh man, yeah, I love that girl. She's amazing. We kind of started off doing things together in Laramie. Like we try to do our own showcases and bring the Laradice community out, and I was there when she was like, oh, this was my bomb. I was like, I was there when you did that. I don't think you bombed. I thought you did pretty well. But it's like all the audio production was down. And I was like, I thought you did good. But
under considering the circumstances
yes.
and everything. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because that's bombing can be from circumstance. It's circumstantial sometimes. There's just things that are out of our control and nothing we're going to be able to do about it. Exactly. But do our time.
Yep. We'll just have to, yeah. They're amazing. Caroline's amazing.
Yeah. So you never really lived in northern Colorado. You probably just came down here and did mics and stuff now and again.
Yes. That's what I did. I drove an hour from Laramie every other week when I could to basically the Colorado Room before there was the Comedy Fort. And so
I remember that.
Yep. That's where I did Hootie's Half Note before it was the Colorado Room. And there was probably a couple mics, but it was just me going down an hour, and really great friend of mine taped my first ever set down in the Colorado Room, like January of 2019. So, I mean, good memories. It's where I started.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
No, I did one set at the Colorado Room back before I even knew I was going to be moving to this area. It's kind of wild because I think about that. Like I was just doing a tour. I had a string of one-nighters that I was doing in New Mexico and Colorado. And then I got a spot on the Colorado Room on my way down. But it's just weird because I look back at that. I'm like, man, when I did that spot, I was just like passing through. Like I was here for a night and I didn't, just like thought the town was fine. And now I'm living in this area.
You just never know.
It was not on the plan. It wasn't like I came and did the show and was like, I'm moving to northern Colorado. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it did. I like it down here. So I like this area. So, and I like where I'm at as far as my location. A lot of people when they find out that I live in Loveland, they're like, well, how do you like it over there? I'm like, I love it. Not to be cliche, but I love Loveland.
Yeah, it is a nice area. I have family around here. And so I wouldn't mind in the far future, who knows, being someone from Colorado. Is really nice, and it's so much down here. There's so much opportunity, and the weather is nice. I mean, being from I grew up in the Midwest, and just down here it's different. It's nice. I like it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the same here. I grew up in the Midwest as well. That's why I'm sick of winter. Yeah, after like 30 some years of winter, I'm just like, no more.
I will say it's kind of nice when you're in the open mic kind of scene and you're like trying to get on, and there might be that one stage that you can't really get on for their open mic, but then there's a snowstorm, so there's like no audience, but everybody's getting on. They're going to do 3 minutes. Like
everybody,
nobody showed up except for these comedians that braved the snow.
So we're going to put them all up. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. If you can get to the mic,
yes.
If you don't get snowed in yourself, that becomes the challenge. Do you live then close to downtown or?
Yes. I live in St. Louis Park technically, so it's like a suburb of Minneapolis. Yep. And so it's really easy to hop over to like Sisyphus or the terminals, one I like go to a lot, that little dive bar. It's great.
Oh yeah. I've been there a couple times.
Yes.
So I love Sisyphus. Sisyphus was great.
Yeah.
That's a great room. When they put that together, they did a great job with that room. But we're not here just to talk about great comedy and great comedy scenes and moving back and forth and all those things. We gotta get into what the meat of the podcast and start talking about bombing. So I would love to hear your bombing story.
Absolutely. So I was thinking about this. I was like, which one to share? A lot of the times I'm on open mics. I'm doing a lot of open mics, but I'm doing a lot of competitions too. I've been doing competitions, and I know some people have different feelings about it. I take it as like it's an opportunity to just work on my comedy. Like
I look at it as it's a good opportunity for stage time in front of what'll probably be a fairly you hope it's a good audience. Sometimes what competitions, it'll be a sold out audience, but it's not always a good audience because they're saving their laughter for their one friend or whatever, which is always disappointing. But you feel like there's a good chance you're going to get a good tape out of it regardless. That's how I always look at it.
Yes. And so before I started taping, I did the House of Comedy competition as a comedian with a day job. It was my first time I've ever done it. I did it this past summer. I went well this past summer, but my first time was not so good. I felt the jokes that I were bringing up were ones working well everywhere else. And I get on stage and it's dead silence. And I was like, what's up with this? This is weird. I think these are funny. They've worked on other people. And I think you're right. You hit it on the nose. I think some of those folks were like, we're here for this particular person. And it was the most awkward thing because I just had to sit with it, burn through my jokes. My time goes fast. But yeah, I mean, I was up there, really famous stage. I didn't tape it. I didn't even voice record. I don't even know what I said, which is disappointing because now I can't be like,
can't like trace it back to see if it was something you said or anything like that.
Which, and that's another thing, looking back on my voice recording or video recordings, I'm like, oh, I didn't bomb as much as I thought I did. When you're on stage, sometimes your perspective is like, whoa, this was terrible. Or I had the other night someone, I will say, my name's Amanda Kuster, and then I do this one like derriere joke. And I was like, you're sitting down on you're supposed to say Keester, the audience call back, and this one person goes, derriere. And I was like, oh, and I hyper-focused on this one person. And I was like, whoa. When I look back on the tape, I was like, oh, I was the only one that heard that. Nobody else heard that.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. So I went on a riff where it wasn't bad. It was just like, I was like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry. We all make mistakes. And I was like, no, why did I point that out? It was crazy. But at the House of Comedy, that was a definite big, like, why isn't anybody laughing? I worked really hard on these jokes. And I don't know. It's just, it was surreal.
Oh, yeah. It's a great club.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I find is it's huge. That room is so big. And even though they have drop down sound barriers to help catch some of the sound, it's easy in that room to feel like you're not doing well because it's such a big room. It's easier for that laughter to get lost.
That's true. That's true. So
and it's such a big room when there's only, a handful of people too. That's the other thing. Cause then it's like, ooh, it's so big and there's only so few people.
Definitely. And I just remember those experiences, inviting people out. I had a lot of people that said, oh yeah, I'll come to this event. I'll support you, bring your laughter, whatever. And then everybody backed out of that event too. I had no support whatsoever. So, and I mean, that's fine. You don't need that. Hopefully you can be a good enough comedian that you're making anybody laugh, but I just felt definitely in that realm of, I think some folks are here for specifically holding their laughter for someone else. And you're right, there's probably some laughter. I don't remember that. I just remember it being very quiet because you remember the quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of my biggest hindrances with a lot of comedy competitions is because they will do where it's like, they'll say it's some audience participation or whatever, and then it's like, well, now those people that came for whoever they're supporting are going to hold back their laughter, and if you're going to do a contest, let professionals judge it, and then the audience can still come support, but then have a good time for everybody, or I feel like it's also maybe the host job to make that clear, and a lot of times they will, but doesn't always work, but to be like, hey, yes, this is a competition, you probably came to see your friends, but support everybody. Yeah. Have a good show. Like it's going to be a better show if you're laughing at everybody if they're funny or when they're funny.
Yeah, and I think they do that. Like I remember from this past summer, I know that Mike Brody does a good job about he was like, hey, laugh at everybody, but you're not like taking notes on did you laugh at your friend? Are you here for this? Nobody's really monitoring that.
Well, yeah, and you can't really monitor.
Yeah, no.
Because you don't. Even if you were trying to monitor, it's not like you know who's there to see who. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Unless you're actually tagging them and you're putting each comic's like support group in one little area.
Exactly. And I will say, some places do that. I noticed that there was a couple places that they're like, "Who are you here to see?" We'll try to more so just to have folks that know you sit next to each other. But one of my supporters, they're like, "Oh, I'll come out and support you. I'll make a little sign that says your name." I was like, "Please, God, don't do that." I was like, I've never seen that being done at a comedy competition, but I was like going to be mortified. I was like, please don't make a sign. Thank you for your support. Just show up.
Yeah, just show up and laugh. That's all you need to do for support. This isn't the WWE. This ain't AW. We don't need signs in the audience. I can be your favorite comic, but let's not make it wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah, folks are like, I had another person, because like it's funny because everybody has these like really great ideas. Another person, one of my colleagues who's a supporter, she was like, "Oh, give me your face," and then they're like, "We're gonna make little stick face signs with your face on it with a weird face." I was like, "Please don't do that. Don't do any of that." I mean, I see your support.
That's good merch, though. That's good merch. I mean, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
You probably, if you turn around, you probably recognize that.
Oh yeah. Very nice. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You probably recognize him.
It's so funny.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good merch. That was, I don't know if he still sells that, but that was his wrestling merch.
Oh.
Because he also wrestles.
Yeah.
That's for people listening and can't see what this is it's a picture on a stick of my friend Devin Cook from the Twin Cities, who also wrestles and is in the Mr. Rogers and his Make Believe Friends, that band. Good people.
Good people. Yeah. So, I mean, don't know if it's right for a comedy competition, but.
Yeah. For merch, good.
Merch.
Could be great.
Yeah.
But to bring to a comedy competition and support, probably more embarrassing than helpful.
Yeah. Ooh.
Although, I mean, if you let's think about some strategy here, because now if you have people, doing that, they got your mask with your little picture with the stick and it's a funny face and they're holding it up throughout the show, they're going to distract the other comedians, because other comedians are going to they're going to inquire. They're going to be like, "What's this?" And then they'll spend their time not doing their jokes. They'll be concentrating on what's happening, and then you go up and do your set. And boom, you had the best set because everybody else was distracted.
I think we've discovered that's the way to win competitions.
We got a new plan. We got a plan. We got to put it in action and see if it actually how it pans out. I mean, I'm sure there will be some social repercussions from other comics. They'll be like, "Well, yeah, we can't associate with that person anymore."
Yeah.
That was just a little too much.
Yeah. They went overboard. Their face, the person that we do not say their name, but we see their face all over the comedy club, they're eliminated.
Although now I kind of want to go to a comedy show where there are people holding signs like wrestling and concerts and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think there are like bigger like when they do like auditorium.
Oh yeah,
name
like
comedians,
stadiums and stuff. Yeah,
they'll be like, "Hey, look at me." But like at a comedy competition, I'm like, that's gonna embarrass me more than anything.
Yeah,
because it might get me disqualified. I don't want to be disqualified. Like, you've been eliminated because you're friends. Oh no, I have friends.
Oh man, and that's why they would eliminate you, just because you have friends. They're like, "Wait, a comic with friends? You can't be in this contest."
You're automatically eliminated.
Yeah, comics don't have friends. That's how we know you're not a comic. You said I have friends.
Yes. You're not a real comic.
Come back when you don't have friends. Then you'll be a real comic.
When you're alone. So lonely.
Yeah, when you're alone and you don't have a social life, then you're a comedian.
Makes it official.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So with that, you like you said, you didn't record it, so you can't really tell what happened, but it just felt like they were holding back. What to you?
Yeah, it just was weird because usually where there's laughter, when I would do it, I was like, whoa, there's no laughter. And then I'm over processing. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's no laughter. Usually there's a pause. I was trying to give a pause. So I'm just ripping through my jokes. Like, then like, okay, I just got to move on through my jokes. And so, and it also could be because I didn't record it. It could have just been me nervous and just being like, oh, nobody's laughing at this, so I'm going to move on really quick. And so, yeah, it is really, really disappointing. But I was like, that's the one. I'm like, that's the one that's like in my head. And that's the one I'm trying to like, okay, I need to overcome. Don't be super in your head when you're on the stage.
Yep.
Even if things bomb, you just need to be like, okay, move on. I'm just going to go to the next joke. How can I address things? I think that's one thing I first said I did at Sisyphus when I first came to the Minneapolis scene. What I called Ron Burgundied it, like Ron Burgundy it. I just was like, teleprompter was my mind, just flooded all these jokes. And the guy that went up before me, and it was super like right after COVID, right after George Floyd, he was from Texas and he talked about police and like killing black people. And I was like, whoa, you're in Minneapolis, dude. And I had to follow that. Ooh. And I didn't address it. And I was like, that's why that time bombed. Like, I knew why. I was like, I think people were trying to be on board with me, but they're also like.
They were still distracted by what just happened.
Yeah.
There wasn't a reset to the room. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I learned from that. But yeah, getting in my head and just like being like, okay, stop. Be in the moment, address things that need to be addressed. Go to your next joke, try to be more aware of your surroundings. And that's lessons learned.
Every show is a lesson learned.
Yes.
Hopefully. I mean, if it is, then you're getting better. That's because there are definitely some people that don't take any lessons from what they're doing. So when you record your sets, when you remember to record your sets and you go back, how do you, when you listen back to your because I assume you do listen back to it. What do you look for as far as like to try to take notes, and what are like, indicators that you think, oh, this joke worked, this joke didn't, aside from the obvious, whether there's laughter or not. But
yeah, I think I look at my energy that I'm giving to the audience. I think that's a huge thing because I'm a super energy bum. Like I said, I'm screaming into the microphone. I want people to be like, she's going to be loud and obnoxious, but in a funny way. Like I want them to be like, hey, this is a very high energy comedian. So sometimes I'll be like, wow, I did okay on that joke. There is some laughter, but I know I can bring more energy to that joke. That's my personal thing that I look for to see is how much energy am I bringing to the joke.
Yeah. Yep.
And now more so, I heard another comedian go like, well, I have this bit. I know it's 15 seconds long. And I'm like, ooh, I need to do that. And I think you were talking about this at an earlier podcast. And I was like, yeah, I need to be like, how long is this set? How long does this take? So then I could take it and put it somewhere else, use it somewhere else. Maybe the energy's better after this other joke and I can build off of it instead of just like being like loud and here like at the beginning. And
well, and that's interesting too, because that's with comedy. It's not just about joke writing. It's not just about performance. I mean, part of being a good comedian is the arrangement of your set. It's almost like being a music composer, but with comedy, you're making the arrangements, the comedic arrangements, if you will. But like, you also have to consider when you're doing that, what, like I said, what works when and what flows, like being able to put stuff that works together. And that can come over time too, where I've had this happen where I'll think of a joke and it just doesn't ever work. And so I'm just like, well, I'll just, I'm not going to worry about that for now. And then I think of another joke and then it comes to me and I'm like, oh, they work great together. Like one makes for a good setup and or a good little joke and the other one builds to it or whatever it might be. And so then you have this old joke and a new joke and then it becomes a great joke. Yes,
I thought of that same thing happened to me. I was thinking I had this joke when I was down here. I would do it. I was like, oh, it's clever. It's an acronym and ooh, it's clever, but it never really got a laugh. And then I was like, ooh, that's a really good bit. I'm going to use this in this set of bits and it's themed and it works a lot better because people are a little bit more like, oh, we are understanding. I think that's my thing is, why aren't you understanding this is a hilarious joke. You need to convey like, oh, this is, you need to communicate with the audience. You need to make sure that sometimes you're just like do you understand this joke? You're leading them to water type of thing. Like, hey, and sometimes I get really excited about a joke and I'm like, hey, this is funny. And the audience is like, no, I don't get where you're coming from with that one.
It's like, you might need to add a punchline or a setup to your punchline. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Like, oh, relatable. Okay, that works. Like making things relatable. Okay. And understandable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your writing process like? What do you sit down and write or?
Yeah. Any way I can. So typically I have a notebook and I'll handwrite. It's really good because then if I handwrite it, it gets into my brain, I think, a little bit more. I'm like, okay, I can write this out. I will also, for my set list, sometimes I'll write just words out to like indicate which bits are supposed to go in what order, and I'll flip different orders and stuff like that. But I have been known, if I don't have a notebook around, if I don't have my notebook around, I'm going to throw it in my notes on my phone. Or because I do voice recording, sometimes I'm like, okay, I have time to like do a quick little voice recording. I'm like, hey, this is a funny bit. I'm going to do it. But it's really funny listening back to those bits because I'm like, remember to say this bit, like, and it's really quiet. And I'm like, this is a funny joke. Make sure to put energy on this. I don't know. It's funny listening back. I was like, I'm not listening to this bit because I'm not giving that energy. It's not like me on stage or anything like that. But any way I can get it down, I'll write it down. I'll record it like through voice memo or on my notes.
Yeah. And then, so when you write it down, like do you do it word for word and then edit from there too?
Yeah. Sometimes for like a new bit, I'll write it down word for word because sometimes my words, I'm very like punny and I need to say something, articulate it, like, and so I'll make sure to write it word for word. And then when I'm doing set lists, it's just like one word from that triggers that memory. So yeah, I'll just, usually word for word. And I have been growing to do the like economy, being like really short with like joke writing, because I think I used to be super long-winded. I'm like a paragraph. I'm like, this is not funny to me. It's hard to write out all this stuff. Yeah. And I was like, where's the punchline? So I'm trying to like think of things that are a little bit shorter, just bits. I guess,
yeah. Well, and that definitely, having some shorter stuff helps, especially when you're doing shorter sets. That's one thing I find difficult. I've been, fortunate enough to get to the level where I mostly feature and headline. And so like, if I go enter a contest or go do like I don't go to as many open mics now just because, if I'm out on the road a lot, I don't need to be going to an open mic. And I try to go and show face now and again, but I can work a lot of my material out on the road. But when I'm doing like showcase spots or like a contest and it's like 3 or 4 minutes, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And then I'm just like, oh, you just have a bunch of one-liners. Just do your one-liners.
Yeah. Those always kill.
Do a bunch of one-liners.
That is always nice to have those in the back pocket. I think like I try to end on a pretty short joke. I think that's helped me too, because I'll be like, okay, I have like 15 seconds left, 10 seconds left. Let's just throw this one-liner at the end, and it kind of closes it up. Mm-hmm. So that's nice having those around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to be able to throw those in, and they can make for good transitions too. You can have a really good joke and then throw in a quick one-liner to transition to something else. Good segue. Now, when you're on stage and you feel like you're losing your audience, or you're in that moment where you tell a joke and it doesn't land, in that moment, what kind of goes through your mind? How do you feel? And what do you try to do to deviate and get the audience back?
Well, what I've noticed from my recordings, because when I do listen back on them, I notice what I do.
That's the appropriate answer.
Yeah.
When I realized what I noticed from my recordings.
I did my research, and upon my research of myself, I tend to just blurt out whatever comes in my head, and that's really cumbersome. Like I'll be like, oh, I guess that didn't work, or okay. And sometimes it does work, but also I would really like to work on that didn't work. Okay, I'm going to do this quick little one-liner or segue to like kind of get me into the next joke. And so, I feel crappy. It's not fun bombing. And that was the one thing that I think the first comedian that I ever met at a comic book convention, as I don't know his name, but he used to be like one of the crew for in 30 Rock. There's a couple bodyguards. That that one comedian. He was in a horrific car accident.
Oh, Tracy Morgan.
Tracy Morgan.
Yep.
So he has a couple bodyguards. So one of his bodyguards was at a comic book convention. And I was like, I'm thinking about going to comedy. Do you have any advice? And he was like, bomb.
Great answer.
And I was like, what is that? It was like,
what do you mean?
what is bombing? And so it like introduced me. Like the first piece of advice I got into comedy was just bomb. Because like the more you do it, you know, the better you'll learn how to react, how to feel, how to move on, how to transition.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah. So it doesn't.
Well, and earlier we joked about you can't be a real comedian until you don't have any friends. But the truth is, you're not a real comedian until you bomb.
Yes,
that's really the real truth behind comedy. You need to bomb because it's part of the process.
Yeah,
of getting better,
or even recognizing a bomb. Because I probably, now that I'm thinking about it, because I didn't record and I didn't voice memo a lot of my sets when I first began. It's like looking back on it, it's like, did I bomb? And then I didn't recognize it. I know when the Comedy Fort first opened up, I talked to some comedians during like an open mic. I was like, I really don't feel like I bombed. And the moment I said that, I went up there and did an open mic, and I was like, oh, I felt bombed. Yeah, I felt that one. I know what the bombing feels like now. I was like, I jinxed myself. I was like, I really don't feel like I bombed. And I was like, nope, that was.
Now I know.
Now
what that
I know.
is.
And that's not fun. And I was like, okay, so, I mean, just getting up there and you're like, okay, just move on to the next joke. But yeah, and bombing's not fun. And that's why we continue to do it. So continue to do jokes, try not to bomb, and then try to just build on and be better.
No, absolutely. You definitely got to try to learn from it.
Yeah.
Because you're not, if you don't, if you just ignore the bomb when you bomb, if you're not aware of it and you just ignore, or you just choose to ignore it, you don't get better because you're not improving your comedy.
Yeah.
And even if you're doing really good, should be trying to always improve. Like I'm a big believer in continuous improvement. Like I'm always trying to improve on everything. So,
I mean, I'm a lifelong learner. I come from educational background. Like I did higher education. And so I've always wanted to be a teacher. And so one thing I've taken away from that realm that I came from is I'm just a continuously learner. So that's basically, I mean, not the only reason I'm in comedy. I'm hopefully going to make people laugh, but I'm a lifelong learner. Like, you have to pick up what can you do to make people laugh.
Yeah. Now, earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about goals, because earlier you said one of your goals in comedy is to eventually one day you want to own your own comedy club.
Yes.
So what kind of inspired you to want to open, that inspired that to be one of your goals? And what does that look like for you? Like, do you have you thought about where you want to open it, or things like that?
Absolutely.
Like you started honing out the details.
I'm honing it out every time I'm in the club. Anytime I get on the scene, I'm like looking what is working, what do I like, what do I not like. So it's kind of feel like part of me, I'm going to open mics or going to different clubs, and I'm infiltrating like what is good about this, what makes it really unique. And so that's a cool thing about doing comedy is I'm getting some inside information just by participating, just by being around, hearing from other comics, like what are their grievances, because comics will tell you that. Like,
a lot of times you don't even have to ask.
Yeah, no,
they'll just start.
You don't
just start telling you.
No, you don't. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But yeah, David Rodriguez, he's amazing. He basically was like welcomed me into the Fort Collins comedy scene when I did my first set at the Comedy Room. And so he opened up his club, the Comedy Fort, and where we're doing Jokecella, and he opened up this club, and it was just like, okay, it's possible.
Yep.
Like it's possible to do it. And I've always been someone that I love leading, and I think comedians are just a unique group of people. Just super I don't know, endearing. There's a hodgepodge of different comedians, but I think just like I love just the scene, just being with people. And I felt it when I went to the festivals or whenever I'm at clubs or doing different things. I'm like, these are my people. I love these people. They're great. They're unique. They bring something to life. I think joy and happiness is really a good medicine for just people in general.
Absolutely.
And so I want to create an environment where it's home, and not only to bring joy and laughter to audiences, which is like a true form of medicine, but also give a place for comedians, because like comedians are always trying to look for a place to do their open mics or, do their scene. And there's a lovely group of people, and I want to make a home for them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that. Now, where? I don't know where.
You haven't decided yet.
I have no clue. I always tell people I am a career nomad because I've always moved for different jobs. I've lived in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, Arkansas. I've lived in Wisconsin. Indiana is where I officially grew up. And then Wyoming, and then now Minnesota. So, I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, logistically, from my Wyoming times, it's like, where's the highway? Like, where can people stop off? And maybe a headliner would be going to Minneapolis, but there's a nice little local town that can pay, and that's not too far away, and they can do like a Wednesday, Thursday show there. And, so that's something I'm thinking about all the time. I'm always thinking about it. Don't know where it's going to be right now, but it's in the back of my head. And every time I tell someone I'm thinking about opening up a comedy club in my future, I feel like I'm getting closer to it. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah, keep manifesting. You're putting it into the universe.
Yes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Oh, and that's good that you have that goal, and that you're still, even though it seems like right now it's probably highly unlikely, not that ever, but I just mean because there's a lot to go into. Even if, you decided you were going to open a club today, you wouldn't be opening a club today. It would still take you months to a year to a couple of years before you went from doing the paperwork to getting the doors open. There's just a lot of work that goes into it.
Yes.
But it's good to like put that out there, because then when you're ready, and like you said, you're doing the research. And I feel like that's why the Comedy Fort is so successful. That is what David did, at least from my conversations that I had. He did a lot of research. He talked to comedians and like, these are the clubs comedians loved. So he went and visited those clubs, went and did festivals, and did a ton of research to see what clubs are working, what they're doing that works, what doesn't, all the research you need to do. And then he opened up is one of the best clubs in the country. It's a fantastic environment for comedy, and it's well run, and because he did his due diligence. And a lot of times it feels like people open comedy clubs with the idea of, I want to make people laugh and maybe make some money doing it, and they don't really do any research into it, and then it's just a big shit show.
Yeah. I will say one thing about David's club that the Comedy Fort does well that I've noticed, I love the entranceway. The flow of traffic is like one way, and it makes it really easy for in and out. And that's something that logistically standpoint, like I think as a producer of doing different events, that's something that you are like, oh, I appreciate that. That was
yeah, absolutely. That's what the comedy, or not the Comedy Fort. I mean, the Comedy Fort does do it, but the House of Comedy, same thing.
Yeah,
they have one way in, and then they have exits for after the show. And it's like once the show's over, you're going out this way. If you want to come back into the bar, that's fine, but you're going out this way and then back around to the bar.
Yeah, and those little things pay off in the end, because people are like, oh, this is nice little flow, and they feel relaxed and keeping everybody chill and in the moment. If you have to push out the same door that people are coming in, that's going to make it awkward.
Oh, absolutely. It makes it awkward, and it becomes a hazard too. There's that too, because you end up with too many people, in one doorway, and if there's an emergency, it could lead to worse things.
Yeah. And then I was talking to Jamie Kennedy at the Loons on the Lake Comedy Festival. I got to meet him. I didn't get to see him perform because it was, one, sold out, and two, it was the same time my heat was. So I didn't get to see him perform, but it was a sold out show during T Swift's sold out shows in Minneapolis. So it was pretty remarkable. But I was talking to him, and I was like, I want to open up my own comedy club. And he was like, here's a piece of advice. Drop the checks at the end. And I was like, cool, thanks. And then I left, and I was like, hey, other comedian, what's drop the checks at the end? Because I was like, I have no clue, but I don't want to look like a fool. I was like, and then...
Well, they say fake it till you make it. Yes, looks like you're doing it.
I'm really good at the faking, yes.
Making it work.
Making it work. I was like, thanks, Jamie Kennedy, I'll do that. And then but the other comedian's like, oh, yeah, give your bill to folks at the, before... or after everybody's finished, because it's distracting. People are pulling out their...
Yeah, it's the famous check drop, which is usually 10 minutes before a show. But logistically, the reason clubs do that is because they want, when the show's over, they want to get them people out of the way so that they can, they have time to flip the room.
Yes.
And you know, and with the way comedy shows are, a lot of comedy clubs don't do enough time, I don't think. And I feel like if they did do enough, you know, if they did it with where there's enough time where you could do the checks at the end, you know, you just put more time between the shows and you'd be able to accomplish that, but they don't want to. And that's another great thing about the Fort is that they don't do a check drop because they do everything. You order everything with QR code and on your phone, and when you're ready to close out your tab. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that can still be a little distracting with people, you know, being on their phones or whatever, but it's not like you don't have physical serving staff coming and dropping checks and people like looking and trying to figure out what they owe and their tip and all the other things. So, yeah. So that's definitely a good little tidbit for clubs. Get rid of that check drop.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great. We're going to start wrapping up. So we're going to, I always like to talk about this. I have you tell a story about bombing, and now I want to hear a story that, of a show that was your favorite gig that you've done so far in your career. Absolutely.
So, Punchline Knockout, I got to participate in that little fun joy at Sisyphus Brewing. Trevor Anderson is one of the hosts. He usually brings on either a couple different hosts with him, but I was like, can I be on here? I used to show up, and he threw me up one night as like a guest comedian, and then I watched multiple nights, and I was like, ooh, I really want to do this. And then one time, Trevor's like, yeah, get up on there. Like, this is my word. And I won. And so just to kind of like summarize, my word was holiday, and I had, yeah, it was good. I was like, ooh, holiday, this is great. And you have to think of brand new material within like 48 hours of the show. And so I took it a different route. I was like, a Hotel Holiday Inn, and I went that route because I was like, everybody's going to do my partner in it. They did, you know, Thanksgiving, different holidays. And I was like, I know that's what they're going to do. I'm going to do something different. For the obvious, yeah. Yep. So I was like, I'm going to do this uniquely. And I did. And I did like Adam Sandler singing Hotel Room Service by Pitbull. That's my one and only impersonation that I do. And I think that's what really like took the cake. So that was a big highlight because I watched it and I saw how people would roll in, and some people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. I was like, this is a big deal to me. Like, I was like, you don't understand. Like, some people are like, I was like, no, this means a lot to me. I got to see this. Like, I started watching that since I came to the scene in Minneapolis, and I had so much fun.
It's a fun show. Oh. Trevor's great. We had, I've done his show. I done it one time. I won too. Yeah. So, winners. Yeah. High five. Winners here. But I had his show was such a fun time that we had him come down for Snow Jam one year, and he ran the show at Snow Jam, which was a lot of fun. So, yeah.
And then you get material out of that.
You do. And I did for a while use, I only ended up using like one joke that I wrote for it, but I used it for a little while as an opener until somebody pointed out that it was kind of a Hacky Row joke, and I didn't realize that. And then I started like looking, and I was like, oh yeah, it is kind of good looking out. So I was just like, nah, I just don't use it. And it's not a big deal because it was like a one-liner, so it's not, you know, easily replaceable. So it was all good. Gotcha. But again, it was a fun time. That's a fun show.
Do you remember what your word was?
Yeah, it was state. I'll never forget because it was like one of the most impossible words. Like, yeah, it was state. And what I did is I did kind of like I guess kind of a weekend update kind of thing or something like where I basically kind of did it. I did it in the sense of like writing headlines kind of, you know, like, and did some political stuff, which I'm not a political comic, so I don't typically do like politics, but that's kind of what I did. I was just like, I don't know. I'm just going to, you know, the state of the, you know, the country or whatever. And then I started doing like headline jokes or whatever.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, but it was fun. I had a good time. And when I won, it was actually, I had some friends that were they were following me around for a documentary. Yeah. So it's in that documentary as well after the fact. So,
it's forever a winner.
Exactly. It's been videotaped. It is forever on the internet.
Memorialized, or what is that?
until the internet breaks.
No, we'll never break, ever.
Never, ever. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Last question. You listen, so you already know what's coming. We get the Art of Bombing playlist.
Yes.
Get pumped. Doesn't have to get you pumped for comedy. Just a song that gets you pumped. What's the song you'd add to the playlist?
Boom Boom Pow by Black Eyed Peas.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. I like me some Boom Boom Pow, Black Eyed Peas. And then I was gonna think, yeah, that pumps me up.
That's awesome. And that's a good cue. One of the lights died.
I know. I was like, ah.
It just quit. I don't know what happened there. It's I might have to get some more ring lights now. All right, well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is great.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.